Want to step up your knowledge and skills as a veterinary technician? Check out our Vet Girls Vet Tech Level 1 and 2 certificate programs, worth 70 hours of CE. All certificate programs are accessible to our elite members. Not an elite member? That's okay. We have a 14-day free trial you can take advantage of. And when you do decide to subscribe, we give veterinary technicians 30% off membership. Join today. Hi, Vet Girl here. In this podcast episode, we interview two outstanding VTSs about the road to becoming a VTS in clinical practice. That's veterinary technician specialist. First, we have Rebeccah Vaughan. Do you want to go by Becky during this
Becky would be
podcast?
fine. Yes.
Her preference is Becky. She is a CVT, VTS in anesthesia and analgesia and clinical practice with a focus in canine and feline. She currently serves as president for the AVTCP, which is the Academy of Veterinary Technicians and Clinical Practice. I have to slow down because I always say my own VTS Academy when I start saying that. And then we have Lorelei DeVolio. Lorelei DeVolio, CVT, LVT, VTS, and clinical practice with an emphasis in exotics, and she also has her CVPM. Currently, she serves as the AVTCP director. So having the president and director is going to be really helpful, and I welcome both of you to answer some of these questions about that long road or what seemingly can be a long road to becoming a VTS in clinical practice. Welcome to Vet Girl.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So perhaps right out of the gate, can you just tell us a little bit about what is the Academy of the Veterinary Technicians in Clinical Practice? Like who makes up that distinguished membership?
So the AVTCP is made up of a group of really dynamic and diverse veterinary technicians who specialize in clinical practice, which by definition means they work with patients. Now, of course, that kind of includes all veterinary technicians, or most veterinary technicians work with patients, but it almost has a connotation of someone who works in a general practice or a practice that does wellness care in addition to all of the disciplines. So it encompasses techs that do dental work and geriatric care and neonatal care. They do behavioral work. They have nutrition expertise. So they do a little bit of everything, kind of like a general practitioner would do. And these are the people who chose to work in exceptional practices that have high quality medicine and chose to go through a process of becoming certified as a VTS, like so many people have with the other VTSs. What am I missing, Becky?
I mean, I think the emphasis, you pretty much covered everything, but the emphasis to me is that clinical practice means that it does not exclude you by not working in a specialty. I think that is a really important designation that the vast majority of our field is working in a clinical practice type environment. And they are made up of high level, highly skilled, masterful technicians that should be recognized as a group of technician specialists.
That's making my heart rate increase having to know a little bit about everything over all lifespans across species. That really starts to stress me out as a VTS in anesthesia. I feel like my scope is very focused. So it's really impressive, ladies. Can you just provide a little bit more detail for our audience or the context for these subcategories? One of you has an emphasis in canine feline, and perhaps I'm not even terming that correctly. The other, Lorelei, you are exotics. And then I've seen this VTS production animal, so VTS and clinical practice production animal. Share a little bit about those subcategories for me.
Well, we modeled our academy after the veterinary specialty group, the American Board of Veterinary Practitioners. And so, similar to them, there's a bunch of different disciplines within clinical practice. So, we started out with canine feline as part of our small mammal specialty. Obviously, those of us who work with exotics, it's very, very different. And there's a huge need for technicians. A lot of us only work with exotic animals. You know, I went 18 years without touching a dog or a cat. So that was, my specialty there. And then there's also a huge group of veterinary technicians who work in production medicine. And over the years, we added another specialty to embrace our people who really focus primarily on felines. It's meant to, while we do excel and specialize in all of the different, disciplines within clinical practice, we do sometimes have to subcategorize ourselves within species because that's what we do.
Now, let me ask a follow-up to that. Maybe, Becky, can you give me an idea of if I was looking to pursue a specialty, and I'll have to be honest, mine would have to be canine or feline and or, because that's all of my immediate experience there, or access to those patients. If I go through this process, which we're going to detail here coming up, do I sit for an exam specific to those species, or is it comprehensive across the scope of the subcategories that your academy offers?
No, you do sit specific to the discipline that you have chosen. The application can entail patients from outside of your scope, but the majority of your cases need to be related to that scope of intent, whether it be canine, feline, exotics, production, or feline. But if the application is passed and you sit for the exam will be specifically focused for that group of patients.
Well, that brings my anxiety down a little bit. And hopefully anyone who's considering pursuing that it will be perhaps focused specifically on and the majority species that they're interested in. How does this AVTCP stand apart from other VTS academies, perhaps like internal medicine? It seems there's quite a bit of overlap, but could you perhaps, Becky, just give us a little bit more detail on how they uniquely stand apart?
Yeah, I think the AVTCP stands apart because of our diverse ability to appeal to a lot of applicants because of the broad caseload that they employ. Most VTSs are somewhat limited to working directly in a small specific field for a certain amount of time. And the applicants that apply to the AVTCP have the good fortune to have been working in a more diverse field, such as general practice. We often get emergency medicine applicants as well that see a really diverse caseload. They have a wide variety of skills that they can employ at a moment's notice. They have a wide range of knowledge. We touched on items such as a little bit of understanding how to perform a neuro exam, and then you jump right into anesthesia. Your next case might be something like geriatric client education, and then you run into your treatment area and you provide inpatient critical care for something that's hospitalized. It's something that is a little bit different because it expects you to have a really wide breadth of knowledge for your patients.
Maybe a great follow-up question to that, Lorelei, would be give me an idea of the process. Let's say I'm a technician, I'm credentialed, maybe I'm not credentialed. What are the steps? What does it look like to go from point A to the finish line of earning that clinical practice VTS designation?
It's a pretty long process. And the first thing I want to say is we are there to support you. So if you have questions, reach out. We like to pair people with mentors. I personally answer all of our emails that we get, and people ask all kinds of questions. I'm always happy to help. So the first place to start is sort of as you alluded to, trying to obtain your credentials. We do require, as do all VTSs, that people have to become credentialed in their state that they're working. So, you have to, depending on what state you live in, follow those guidelines. And even in states that don't have guidelines or requirements, you still then need to at least sit for the VTNI, the Vet Tech National Exam, so that you can be credentialed in some way. And once you become credentialed, your time clock kind of starts, and you have to work for a minimum of 5 years, which comes to what we calculate as 40,000 hours. And you need to basically start learning and developing skills throughout those 5 years, going to continuing education. All of our continuing education requirements have to be given by specialists. That is also a really big deal to us. We want to make sure that when people are learning, they're getting educated by people who are recognized as specialists. It could be veterinarians or technicians, but they do have to be specialists. And then after the 5 years, then they're able to apply. And that application process looks like 1 year entire term. So we have a pre-application where they have to fill out a bunch of waivers and forms. They have to describe all of the continuing education that they've had to do. It's 50 hours right now, but that can change. They have to propose people to write them letters of recommendation because they do need at least one person who's a specialist that they've worked with to provide them a letter of recommendation. They have to describe their employment history and a bunch of other things. If they pass that pre-application process, then they get to complete the application process, which takes the rest of the year, where they write case reports and case logs and develop a skills list that has to be signed by people that they work with, veterinarians or VTSs that they work with. So the skills list is pretty huge, but they only have to master 80% of it, which is good. Not every hospital has all the bells and whistles, all the fancy toys. They may not do every single thing that's on the list, so it's 80%. And then they have to pass in and at least have 50 passing case logs, can submit more. And then they have to have the case reports too. And the case reports, I think, are often the hardest part because we expect an extremely high level of, scientific writing. It has to be very professional, as if you were submitting to be published in a journal. So I know that's a lot of information, but it is a huge amount of work. Yeah, we're definitely here to help.
Yeah, it sounds like the end result would be an extremely well-rounded, polished, professional technician, whether that be from being able to write, but also demonstrate a diverse number of skills and well prepared with their educational background and continued education, as well as obviously being credentialed. Is it inclusive of international candidates as well?
Oh, yeah, we actually have members from a bunch of different countries. It is a little bit complicated because not every country has credentialing standards that are exactly the same, but we are willing to work with different countries. I also just wanted to say I misspoke earlier and I said it was 40,000 hours. It's 10,000 hours over 5 years. I don't want to scare everybody. It's 10, it's 40 hours. It's assuming you work a 40-hour work week, a 50 week a year, and then it comes to about 10,000 hours. And the other thing I did want to add to that too is we do accept up to 7 years. So a lot of people who go on maternity leave or take a leave of absence for whatever reason within like a 5 year period and then go back to work, you can claim up to 7 years. It's 10,000 hours within that 7 years. So sorry I misspoke, but that's how we work. And yes, we do love working with our international applicants.
Yeah, and maybe that accounts for people who have wonderful employers that give them more than 2 weeks of vacation and they actually use their vacation, right? So if you have 4 weeks of vacation, you
Yeah.
still can meet that time frame by just perhaps working for 6 years or 5.5 years
Oh,
before your
absolutely.
application.
Absolutely. I would encourage it.
Yeah, I definitely encourage more than 2 weeks. Outstanding. That's very fascinating. I love that you mentioned you have people, you check the email and you personally respond,
Yeah.
which leads us to ask, I'd like to hear from both of you, so please take turns and jump in. What are some of the most common questions you're asked? How do you triage those for people?
People ask all the time about what do I do if I don't know a specialist? And that is a really hard question for me to answer because it is something that we don't compromise on. You simply have to have worked with a specialist, whether it's a VTS or a veterinary specialist. It could be in any specialty. It doesn't have to be within, the AVTCP or ABVP or anything like that. It could be any specialist, but you have to have worked with them. And people get upset about that. They're frustrated. They'd have to move. They'd have to work overtime, moonlighting at an emergency hospital. And I get it. That isn't ideal for people and who have families and structure in their lives. But the bottom line is, if you are trying to be a specialist, you at some point within your training really do need to understand what it's like to work with someone who's been through this process. And we need to know that that person believes you have what it takes to also get through this process. So it's an important thing. And I hate that question. I get it probably once a week.
Yeah. And most academies have that minimum standard of working with a specialist as well. Becky, what do you find you get asked most?
I think the most common one for me is, am I able to apply with, X amount of experience that I have or the type of experience that I currently have? Prior to us deciding to add in the feline only subcategory, I got that question a lot. I work in a feline only practice. Can I apply if I don't see canine patients? And it was a little tricky prior to that. That's one of the primary reasons we added feline. But we also get a lot of questions about, I work partly in shelter medicine. I do 2 days a week in shelter medicine, or I work in an ER practice, or I work in a place that is, surgery heavy and I work only in the surgery department. Am I going to be able to get all the diversity of cases I need to submit an appropriate application? And the answer I have for most of those people is, it can be a little bit tricky. It certainly doesn't rule you out. There, as with all other VTS applications, there is a skills list. So it's pretty convenient for anyone that's interested to check out our website, take a look at the skills list, and see if those skills are things that you do on a regular basis. If you can continue to work in the field that you love and you don't want to leave, and you can match those skills, then, the answer is a resounding yes, you probably can apply.
Awesome. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for people as long as they, at minimum, obviously have that time span in and get their hours in, but also then work with a boarded specialist in any specialty, whether that be a diplomat, so a veterinarian, or a fellow VTS, veterinary technician specialist. So both of you are VTSs in clinical practice, but Becky, you also have one in anesthesia and analgesia,
I
my
do.
heart. That's my love. Could you take a moment to talk about the process if we have listeners that are already a VTS in another academy, what that might look like for them pursuing a VTS in clinical practice, and then maybe hint on why having multiple VTSs was a benefit to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I have more than one is that my career has evolved a bit over time, changed. I actually started specifically in specialty medicine, in anesthesia, surgery, and then radiology, where I was running a lot of anesthesia for a lot of different procedures. So that one, one thing led to another. That was the sensible move for me. I absolutely love anesthesia. I still do. I still do a lot of anesthesia teaching. My career ended up changing when I moved to a very rural area of Vermont and moved to a general practice. And I felt very out of my element, like embarrassingly so. Everything was rusty. And it hit me that I not only was proud to be a VTS in anesthesia, but I was proud to have knowledge mastery and have skills mastery. And I realized that that was really my passion. Like, if I was going to do anything, I was going to be the best I could possibly be at it. And the timing worked out just beautifully that the AVTCP had just come about. This was right around 12 years ago. And I was, after working in the clinical practice for some time and kind of regaining my general practice skills, I was able to apply. And the becoming the VTS in clinical practice overwhelmed me with pride. I will say that while my VTS in anesthesia was an absolute challenge and I learned a lot, clinical practice is the one that really made me feel like I was a well-rounded, strong technician. I felt like I could do anything. I felt like I could problem solve whatever case came to me. Whatever doctor walked up to me and said, I have this tricky case. What do you think about this? We could troubleshoot it together because I had the background, I had the knowledge, I had the skills mastery to actually make a difference in that pet's patient care. And that is something that I really take a lot of pride in with clinical practice, is I feel like I can be helpful in almost any situation because of my diversity in my skills and my knowledge. I would think the benefits of becoming a VTS overall is kind of twofold. You have the ability to demonstrate high level skills. You have the ability to mentor if that's something that you want to do, almost immediately. For anyone that has become a VTS, you're suddenly a mentor. You're a mentor to everyone, even though we don't always feel like we're the best person for the role. It often comes to us to help problem solve and help with tricky cases, and to be able to be a leader and a mentor is really valuable, not only to your team, but for yourself. It helps drive you to continue to grow, to continue to learn. For anyone that is interested in being that high level technician in any field, I would definitely recommend BTS.
Now, Lorelei, you have some different acronyms behind your name and perhaps a different pathway to pursuing your goals. Give us a little bit of an idea why perhaps, and perhaps maybe which one came first, your VTS in clinical practice or your CVPM, and how you made that transition.
Well, probably similar to Becky, as you stay in this career long enough, you're going to have some evolution to what you do, or at least most people, as lives change. So for me, I've always loved exotic animal medicine. It was, it's the most important thing to me when I first started out. And I was on the organizing committee actually, who when we started ABTCP, it was me and two other exotics people, along with the canine feline group and the production medicine group, and we put the whole thing together right before Becky applied. I don't know if Becky, you were year one or two, but you were like one of the first. You were year one, yeah.
Yep.
So for me, everything Becky said about wanting to be a clinical practice specialist was is dead on right. I felt like, and especially for me, for exotic animal medicine, it was so important that there are representatives of people who focus solely on this very unique niche part of veterinary medicine. And I felt like it was really important that there is leadership in that community that can help mentor and train and be there to support people coming behind me who are looking to carry on exceptional medicine for these really underdeserved animals in veterinary medicine. So it's just been, the absolute highlight of my career. And then I think like a lot of technicians, as we kind of age up a little, and I'm saying age out yet, I'm going to say we age up a little. Like you sort of start absorbing more leadership duties and you get, maturity and people start relying on you for things. And, maybe first you become a head tech and then maybe you're doing some scheduling and then you're a shift supervisor, and that was kind of my trajectory. I just kind of got more and more leadership until I actually became the manager of a veterinary hospital where I, led a team, and I actually was there when the hospital opened, and I led a team for 17 years as the hospital grew, and it was absolutely amazing on a totally different level. I loved hiring people. I loved training them. I loved developing protocols, and I loved learning about, spreadsheets and the finances and HR. And I just found it all really an interesting part of veterinary medicine that, without it, you can't practice medicine if you don't have amazing leadership and a management team. And I just really loved it. And so at one point, I just thought, kind of like Becky, if I'm going to do this and this is going to be part of my career, I want to be the best I can be. So I was like, well, I either need to get a master's in business administration or at least start with getting a CVPM, which is a certified veterinary practice manager certification. And I decided to start there because I wanted to see what that was like. And the process was great. It's a lot like a VTS, only it's non-clinical. Obviously you're not practicing medicine, but you have a lot of requirements for skills and showing your knowledge base and recommendation letters from a huge host of people. It's, more than just the two. You have to have a lot of just time and job experience, and the application process is pretty extensive. And the exam was really grueling. Like I found the exam very difficult, and it's been great. And I will say too, the recredentialing process for CVPM is much more, we have a ton of CE that we have to do to maintain it. It's every 2 years and it's a lot. We take it really seriously to maintain high quality standards for being a manager. And I view it as important as the clinical side of things. And again, if you're going to be a manager, like go all in, right?
Yet speaking of continued education, what type, now let's say I achieved my VTS in clinical practice. How do I keep it? What do I need to do to keep my VTS in CP and then whatever subcategory?
It mostly is a continuing education guideline that we will have every 5 years is a recertification process. And for us in clinical practice, and I would guess that most of the VTSs work the same, anesthesia works similarly, that you are required to fill out this recredentialing or recertification application that demonstrates an accrual of points. And there are basically a certain number of points that you have to reach to say, I have fulfilled all of my duties in maintaining my education. And some of it can just be attending CE, just like anything else. It does have to be specific CE given by diplomats or VTSs, and at least a portion of it has to be in your discipline. So canine, feline, exotics, what have you. But you can also accrue points by doing online teaching or giving lectures or writing journal articles or even textbook chapters. All of those things add into your demonstration of, continuing your studies, continuing to stay up with what current medicine is, doing and how things are changing. And like I said, that is submitted once every 5 years for us.
In addition to that, another way that you can get points, this is near and dear to my heart, at least from our academy, and this is true for every academy, is you can serve on one of our committees. And that's a huge, important part of joining a VTS is, it doesn't end when you become a VTS. We're looking for people who want to be part of this. A lot of the people that have served either on the executive board or on the different committees, I've known for years and years and years, and we've become friends. And it's really a nice to get to know people, learn about, the ins and outs of the VTS and helping other people become credentialed.
So regarding becoming a VTS, now you have it, you're maintaining it. What specific career advancement opportunities have you both been provided now that you have your VTS?
I would say for me, I've gotten a lot of great pay increases. First of all, I have received a pay increase. Both times I received a VTS. And then once you are a VTS, you sort of get included in the network. This group of VTSs that will tap on each other for advice or for help. I've been reached out to on 2 separate occasions to write textbook chapters. I was contacted by an online teaching program. I work for VetMed Team. I teach classes online on VetMed Team, and I was solely contacted because of my VTS. And as far as my regular everyday employment, it has made me qualified for some training roles, some mentorship roles that I wouldn't otherwise have available to me. So it has absolutely changed my career advancement and really supported my professional development.
Lorelei, have you experienced similar?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I have been tapped, as Becky said, to write textbook chapters and edit textbook chapters. I've lectured at dozens of veterinary conferences all around the country and in Canada. I have definitely gotten pay raises and just warrant a higher pay rate if I, am looking for different work. I also have had a lot of recruiters come and say, "Hey, are you interested in this opportunity? Or are you interested in that opportunity?" Between having the CVPM and a VTS, there's just a huge amount of opportunity out there for different roles within veterinary medicine. And definitely within the hospital that I currently work at, it feels good. It feels good to know that I'm part of this caregiving team that has a level of expertise that garners a bit of like admiration. The other technicians are excited to have a VTS join their team. They're excited to learn. They're excited to, hey, how what was it like for you? Is this something I should do? And, would you consider mentoring me? Would you consider writing me a letter of recommendation? And it's wonderful to feel almost like an inspiration to people who are looking to, follow in your footsteps to a certain extent. And that I can't speak enough for, people ask all the time, what are the benefits of becoming a VTS? Like, oh, a 50-cent raise, they're very like, they get sort of like down and out about it, like it's not worth it. And it is worth it on so many levels. If you are open to opportunities, they're there for you. I mean, I've been asked to sit on advisory boards. I have been asked to chair committees through, NAFTA and different groups, and you can do as much or as little as you want with it, but it certainly provides you those opportunities.
Yeah, it sounds like there's professional and personal benefits to pursuing a VTS, giving back to the community as well as to yourself, perhaps. For the larger veterinary profession and perhaps even pet owners and clients who might listen to these podcasts, what would you say in summary is truly what value a VTS in clinical practice as a technician would bring to the care of the pet?
I think I would have to say, first and foremost is improved and more efficient care of a pet. I think there are plenty of situations in which I have been able to step in and care for a specific animal in a way that maybe someone didn't think about, or because I had seen and been familiar with that certain type of disease process, I automatically am thinking ahead 2 steps as, this is what we're going to need to watch for now, and this is what I need to implement as far as care. And then checking in with the doctor and seeing that we're on the same page, collaborating together, reporting back subtle changes in patient care. I think one thing that pet owners might not realize often is that, a doctor and a technician work together as a team where the doctor is implementing orders and the technician is carrying them out. Almost anything that is relayed to the doctor came from that technician. And if the technician has mastery of advanced skills and knowledge, they're going to really understand what they're looking at as, the situations of that case change. They'll appropriately report it back to the doctor, and therefore the doctor can decide to improve the ability to care for that pet. And I think that is an invaluable skill that a VTS brings that they not only do on their own, but they also teach the rest of the team. When they're there and they're functioning at that high level, the rest of the team sees that and they learn from that. And suddenly the whole team is practicing a higher level of medicine.
Outstanding, Lorelei. Anything to add?
I mean, I think that really describes it. I feel like a lot of clients don't think about or know what's happening behind the scenes. A lot of vet hospitals take pets away from them and they don't know what's going on. They just are scared and hoping their pet is cared for well. And I think educating people to what is going on behind the scenes is important, and to give them the assurance that there is a team of people that might include a VTS is huge. The knowledge base that goes along with certainly an AVTCP specialist is going to provide a level of care for these animals that is the highest standard. And that isn't to diminish non-VTSs in any way. There's amazing technicians and licensed and credentialed or not on all walks of life. And I think that there is something to be said for having a specialist on that team as well. And clients, there's nothing wrong with looking on the website and asking like, hey, are there VTSs on the team? And, we should be proud of what we do, and people should be excited to have us on their team. One of the vets I work with, she embarrasses me terribly every time we go into an exam room. She's always like, this is Lorelei. Not only is she a credentialed veterinary technician, she is a VTS. She is one of 15 people in the country who is specialized in exotic animal medicine, and you are so lucky to have her on the team. And I hate when she does it, but I can tell you that like when she does, clients are like, wow, oh my gosh. And like it opens a conversation, and it's like, I hate it. It's horrible, but it is so, like, nice to have the conversation, and people always are, shocked and interested to learn what that means. So,
Yeah, it adds value. That's so important. Speaking of websites and looking at practice websites to see if they have specialists that would meet a patient's needs, what website could you provide me if our listeners want to pursue a VTS or find out more information and they need to navigate somewhere? What's the website they can go to?
so for AVTCP, it's avtcp.com, org. Oh my gosh.
Org. It's not org.
We're an org.
Okay, so avtcp.org, and that can
Yeah.
answer a lot of questions about the application process. That's where they find the email to send you, Lorelei, with their questions, right?
Yes. The email is avtcpinformation@gmail.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, that I really appreciate both of your time. It's definitely opened, I mean, even as a VTS, albeit in another academy, it's really opened my knowledge and appreciation for every VTS Academy, but specifically for the VTS Academy you guys are representing, because the scope of work that you do is phenomenal to me, and the ability to touch so many patients' lives and obviously improve that human-animal bond with best practice really has a large reach. So thank you for your guys' time, for giving that to Vet Girl and giving us a bit more information about that long road to becoming a VTS in clinical practice, ladies.
Thanks so much for having us, Amanda.
It's been fun. Thank you. Really appreciate your time too.